Hello everyone, this is your friend from Naruto Audio Fanfics, and we are back once again with a brand new fanfic. Which is what if Naruto Uzumaki almost died, and the world changed because he lived, Naruto times Hinata times Sakura times Ino times Tenten times Tamari times Kurenai times Anko times Tsunade times Yugito, Part 1. If you enjoy this story, don't forget to hit the like button, thumbs up, and subscribe to the channel for more amazing Naruto fanfics like this. So without wasting any more time, let's start today's fanfic. It was a dark day for Konoha. It was the day that the Kyuubi attacked. There was no apparent reason for this attack, just the destruction of the village hidden in the leaves. Many ninja had died this day, all to defend the village and their families. Most of them were really skilled, while others didn't stand out. One of these ninja who didn't went by the name of Konosha Kunio. He was still a genin at the age of 25. He only knew academy-level ninjutsu and average-level kenjutsu. He had long brown hair that he kept in a ponytail and deep brown eyes. Even though he knew he didn't stand a chance at killing the Kyuubi, he had to do all he could to at least stall the monster until the Hokage could do something. He always stood a distance from the beast and threw kunai at it. Though it looked like the Kyuubi didn't even feel them. Then when he decided to retreat and get his daughter from his house since the Kyuubi was getting close, too close, to his house which she was in. Almost as if the beast was reading his thoughts on how to cause him the most pain, one of Kyuubi's mighty tails lashed out and was heading straight for his house. No. Iori. Kunio yelled as he tried to get to his house and save his daughter before it was too late. He managed to get through the door when Kyuubi's tail struck, almost instantly bringing down his house. Moments later Kunio emerged from the rubble and yelled, Iori, as he was desperately looking for her. When he finally found her, she was long gone. He just sat there for the rest of Kyuubi's attack with her in his arms, until the Hokage finally managed to seal the beast inside a newborn at the cost of his own life. All he thought about from that point on was the death of that cursed Kyuubi brat. He didn't know it, but he would play an important role in the future of that child. 8 years later, what had started out like any other day for Naruto had become a living hell. He had started playing by himself, as usual, outside the orphanage, when one of the orphanage workers had told him to go shopping for an incredibly long list of groceries. When Naruto looked at this list, he said, "You expect me to carry all this?" Then the attendant replied, "Well, how else are you supposed to earn your keep around here?" she said with a bit of hatred in her voice. Fine. Naruto said as he grabbed the money she was holding and started walking. Sure, all the other children had to do chores and stuff to help out. But none of them had the hard jobs that the adults usually did. This was going to be worse than that time he had to get that wild boar out of the playground. He still had no idea how it got out there. He also found it strange that the workers were all standing outside laughing as he tried to get the boar. It was almost as if one of them let the boar in. On his way to the market, he had passed by Ichiraku's ramen stand. He stopped for a moment and sniffed the sweet smell of ramen. Immediately his stomach had started growling. He'd been told to go buy groceries so early that he hadn't even had breakfast yet. Then, as if reading his thoughts, Ichiraku had shouted to him, "Hey kid, want to come in for some ramen?" Naruto replied, "I don't have any money," with a sad tone in his voice. Then Ichiraku looked down, then he looked up again and said, "Don't worry about it, this one's on the house." Naruto had suddenly jumped up for joy and shouted, "This is going to be the best day ever." Little did Naruto know that someone was watching him. "Don't worry, Iori, Daddy will avenge you," the man had thought to himself while he tightened his grip on his black and white swords and glared at Naruto with some of the deepest brown eyes you had ever seen. Man, that was good, Naruto thought to himself. But because of his little stop at Ichiraku's, he was way behind schedule. So to save himself some time, Naruto had decided to take a shortcut through the alleyways to make his task go a little faster. He kept walking through the alleyways thinking that he was getting closer to the market. Instead, he was heading further away from the market. Naruto was humming some tune that he had heard some people singing earlier. Naruto had turned a corner. He saw that a man with 2 swords was standing there staring right at him. He looked real scruffy, and looked like he hadn't slept in a while. There were barely any homeless people in Konoha, until the Kyuubi attack, that is. That dark day had left many people homeless, some lost even more than their homes. In Naruto's experience, they had always been hostile towards him, so he thought to take the way opposite of where the guy was standing. A little while after he thought he was out of sight of the man, he heard what sounded like someone was running up behind him. He turned around to see what it was, and saw a glint from the moon shine off of something metallic. Naruto had barely managed jumped back to avoid a slash of a sword. He looked at his attacker and saw that it was the man standing in the other alley. Naruto yelled at him, "What's your problem, old man?" The man just stared at him and said, "It's time for you to pay for what you have done to Iori, demon," as he walked towards Naruto. He had kept going until he backed Naruto into a wall. He collapsed on the floor, his legs no longer wanted to cooperate with him. Naruto replied, "I didn't do anything. I don't even know who Iori is," with obvious fear in his voice. But the man wasn't even listening. He was about to bring his white sword down and finish Naruto. Naruto brought his hands up to protect himself. "Is this it? Is this how I'm going? I always thought it would be some cooler way, like protecting a girl, not in some dark alleyway murdered by some guy the first don't even know," Naruto thought to himself. As the sword was about to strike, a kunai came flying out of nowhere at the blade and knocked it out of his hand. It had landed right beside Naruto. He looked at the fallen sword and then up to his attacker. The man was a little shocked about the slight resistance, but he wasted no time to try and kill the demon child. He pulled out the other black sword he had and went for the kill. But as if the fallen sword had a mind of its own, it found its way to Naruto's hand. Without thinking, Naruto got up and made a slashing motion upwards. Both Naruto and the man finished their attacks, and stood still for a moment. Then, as if an invisible blade had struck him, the hand he was holding his sword with was cut off. With a scream of pain, the attacker grasped his arm. He dropped to his knees. He made several attempts to get back up, but fell back down every time. This was doing his body no favors, as the blood came out of his wound faster, making a pool of blood at his knees. It looked like he was about to faint, but before he did, he looked at Naruto one last time. If you were there, you would be able to see the hatred in his eyes. The man had fell on his side, he still had that same hateful look. Then his eyes began to close and lost consciousness. Naruto is shocked at what had just happened. He dropped the sword that he had used to cut off this man's hand. A moment ago all Naruto cared about surviving, now all he thought about was what he did. Naruto just stared blankly at the person that lay before him. He was ashamed at what he had just done. He didn't know the man and he was just defending himself. But Naruto didn't want to hurt him, he never wanted to hurt anyone. "You know you were just defending yourself, right?" Naruto heard a voice say. Again the sword found its way to his hand and he turned around ready to defend himself from any threat. What he saw was a hooded figure that was staring at him from under its hood. It looked like it was a girl, judging from the slender figure, and only a few years older than him. "You know, for somebody who looks like they regret they ever picked up a sword, you grabbed onto it really quick," she said. At this, Naruto looked at his hand and saw that he was carrying the sword. "What do you want?" asked Naruto in a sad tone. "Well, all I wanted was to talk to such a little skilled swordsman, and cute too, and maybe tell him it's all right. This man was only passed out and that he'd be fine if we took him to a hospital." Upon hearing that, Naruto was a little relieved, though he blushed a little bit at the cute comment. He didn't kill him, but he felt bad that he cut his hand off. In his thoughts, he didn't notice the girl go towards the man and take the blade from the now severed hand and the sheaths for the swords. She had sheathed the black blade and walked towards him. "Here," she said as she held the sword and sheaths in front of him. Naruto looked up at her, wondering what was going on. "What are you doing?" asked Naruto. "Well, I can't let such fine swords go to waste, so I decided that you should have them since you're so good with them," she stated as a matter of fact. So Naruto took them and admired them. They were fine swords, the sheath, hilt and guard were made out of the fine ebony and ivory. He looked the swords in his hands and saw that the blade was light and thin, making for a nice swift clean cut. The blades on one of the swords was colored the darkest black and the other purest white. Though only difference, besides the color, was that the black one was serrated near the base of the blade. Naruto was mesmerized by the beauty of both of these blades. As Naruto was looks at the swords, the girl looked like she was in deep thought. Then finally she said, I think I'll call them the Tazegare and Akatsuki. What? Asked Naruto. Weapons of this quality usually have names, and since the guy who owned them can't really tell us what they were called, I took it upon myself to name them, she said. The Tazegare and Akatsuki, huh? Said Naruto as he looked down at the blade. Naruto was still very confused about all this. This all seemed so sudden, maybe somewhat forced into it. What's your dream? The girl asked. What? Naruto replied. That seems to be your favorite word today. It's simple, what's your dream? As in what would you like to accomplish more than anything? She replied. Oh, that's easy. I wanna be the Hokage, he said as he smiled his foxy grin. Oh, Hokage is it? That's a pretty big dream. Is there any particular reason why you want to be a Hokage? Not just a Hokage, the best one there ever was. And I want to be one because everybody respects him, and that's what I want from everyone. That's a very good dream you have there. I hope. Quick look over there. The girl said as she pointed behind him. Where? Said Naruto as he quickly turned around to look for whatever she was pointing at. He looked around hard, but all he could see was the same dank, dark alley that was there before. I don't see anything, he said as he turned around. When Naruto looked back, the girl was gone. He looked around for her, but could find no trace of her. Even his attacker was missing from the spot he had just been. She's good, Naruto thought. He looked a bit more and saw a note where she was standing before she pulled her disappearing act. When he picked it up and read, it said, well then kid, I have to go now, I have other things I have to do. Train with those blades, become a skilled swordsman. I also took that man to the hospital, so don't worry about it. Don't ever change. P.S. I left a piece of sharp metal there, mind picking it up and keeping it? I'll be back for it later. He looked around a bit more and found the strange piece of metal that the girl had mentioned. The piece was sharp and flat that was curved into a half crescent. There was also what looked like a clan symbol in the middle of it. It was a simple circle with a vertical line going up the middle. The left side of the circle was black and the right was white. When he touched it, it seemed to vibrate. It felt very odd. It was also very light, even a shuriken was lighter than it. It was almost dusk when Naruto looked up at the sky and said to himself, I will keep this for you until we meet again, that's the promise of a lifetime. Then Naruto looked around and yelled, where the hell am I? The mysterious girl was watching him from a roof as he went running in the completely wrong direction. Looks like he's one of the ones I'm looking for. As long as he gets stronger, he'll be more than suitable. As long as he keeps our clan's crest, I'll be able to find him. So I guess that'll be 1 down and 2 to go, she thought to herself. She reached into her pocket and pulled out 2 similar pieces that she had given out. One was the other half of Naruto's crescent, and the other was a piece that was shaped like a black. If put together, it would make a moon. These 2 pieces seemed to pull in different directions. Wonder which one I should follow next, she thought to herself. She then remembered the man that was slung on her shoulder. I guess I should deal with this guy first, she said to no one in particular. With that, she went with Kunio to the hospital. It was graduation day at the academy. Every student was a little nervous today. Since it was the day that they were to become ninja. Their sensei would probably lecture them on how ninjas should not show these kind of emotions, since they were taught to ignore or not even feel these kinds of emotions. But they were just children after all. Naruto was sitting in the back of the class balancing on the back legs of his chair. Right now the ceiling seemed a lot more interesting than watching people go out and in to get their forehead protectors. He only raised his head when someone of interest went out. It was no surprise that Mr. Perfect himself passed. He found it annoying how when Sasuke had came back in the classroom there were cheers left and right. Sometimes he got praise for things that everyone else did. Sometimes he didn't deserve the praise. Heck, if he used his swords he could probably take him on. He was brought out of his silent rants when he heard some movement to his right. When he looked to his side he saw Hinata moving to take her test. She was a strange one to him. She sat next to him for the entire year but barely said anything. As she passed behind him, Naruto said, "Good luck, Hinata," and smiled at her. She looked at him, then turned beet red and practically ran towards the door. Guess she's nervous. He thought. Naruto was nervous too, but he thought it would be better to us not think about it. It had been exactly 4 years since he had received the Tazegare and Akatsuki from that mysterious girl. He had regretted not asking for her name, since he constantly thought about that night and the promise that he had made to her. Sure, it was a promise he made without her knowing, but it was still a promise. He was also wondering what that piece of metal she left behind was. He always kept it with him. Just to make sure that if the girl had come back for it he wouldn't have to go all the way to his house to get it. It was still a very strange thing. It still vibrated whenever he touched, but it seemed to vibrate more and more as time went on. There had even been a slight aura about it. He had other people touch just to see if it gave the same reaction, but it only acted that way to his touch. It was strange, but he thought nothing of it. It was also that incident that caused him to be kicked out of the orphanage. He had been lost all night in the alleyways. When he finally got back, the workers had accused him of stealing the money he was given, even though he still had the money with him. That same day they had kicked him out. Luckily for him the Hokage had heard of this right away and had got him to move into a small apartment. It was rather run down, but Naruto didn't mind. He also knew how to take care of himself because all of the chores that he did around the orphanage. He was also given a monthly allowance to buy food and other necessities. He was quite the cook since he had to do it, but nothing beat ramen in Naruto's eyes. This wasn't the only change for Naruto. He had changed his clothing since his bright orange jumpsuit wasn't suited to his stealth missions, pranks. He was spotted from quite a distance when he tried to hide afterwards and it got quite annoying. Sure, he was caught eventually, but he managed to run long enough for him to have some fun while doing it. He now sported a black vest with an orange hood and orange trim. He wore a fishnet shirt underneath it, black pants with a single orange stripe around each thigh and some standard black ninja sandals. For some reason he just couldn't give up on his favorite color, so he decided to leave a little orange that wouldn't be too noticeable. He also wore standard ninja gloves with the metal plates, a black headband and an armguard on his left wrist. His physical appearance hadn't changed much. He still had his blonde hair, cerulean eyes, whisker marks. The only thing that really changed is that his muscles are more defined, not bulky like those professional bodybuilders he heard about in the West. This was mainly because of the extra training he had to put to try and master his sword skills and be a shinobi. He kept his sword training a secret from his sensei and the rest of his classmates. He didn't really want any extra attention, since most of it was bad. He also thought that this gave him a slight edge over everybody else. Like his sensei said, every ninja should have an ace up their sleeve. Naruto was going over the events of that fateful night for the millionth time and wasn't really paying attention to the people going in and out. Then finally, Naruto, Iruka had shouted. At this Naruto was so startled he fell out of his chair. Naruto looked up and yelled, "What? It's your turn to be examined," Iruka said in a tone that you could tell he was annoyed. "Oh, okay," Naruto said as he sheepishly scratched the back of his head. Iruka had started to leave the room and head for the examination room. Naruto got up, dusted off his pants and ran to catch up to Iruka. Iruka was now seated beside Mizuki holding his pen ready to mark Naruto. Naruto was standing in front of them ready to perform whatever jutsu that they asked. "Okay Naruto, all you need to do is produce at least 3 clones," Iruka said as Mizuki just sat there and stared at him. Naruto was cursing in his mind. He was good enough with all the other academy jutsu, but for some reason he couldn't get the hang of clones. The most he had ever produced successfully was only 1, he always had trouble with the second. Naruto decided to try anyway. He closed his eyes and made the necessary hand seals. He then focused his chakra and almost instantly there was large puffs of smoke. When it cleared there were 4 Narutos. 2 of them were standing, while 2 were on the ground looking very pale and pathetic. Iruka sighed and said, "I'm sorry Naruto, but you fail." Later that night, Naruto was hiding from the guards that had been chasing him since the Hokage Tower. Naruto had thought that they were part of the exercise the Mizuki had told him would make him pass. Mizuki didn't say that he needed to fight anybody, but for some reason he felt the urge to bring along the Tazagare and Akatsuki anyway. When he was sure that his pursuers were gone, he started to head to the place that Mizuki had told him about. When he got there, he found the shed in the open area. He went to sit in the middle of the clearing. He then rolled open the scroll and looked at the first technique that was on the scroll. He had read the words, Kage Bunshin, and he instantly got irritated with it. "Aw man, why does it always have to be clones?" Naruto asked to himself. Regardless of how he felt about the technique, he started to read through the scroll and find out about the seals, amount of chakra and what the jutsu does. Naruto was laying exhausted on the forest floor. He had a huge grin on his face. He had successfully learned how to make the clones. As he was resting, an idea had popped into his head. If I pass by only learning one jutsu, then I'll be even more amazing if I learn more, Naruto yelled to no one particular. He had managed to crawl back to the scroll and read through a couple of jutsu. He saw that most of them required a huge amount of chakra. He had enough for most of them, but he lacked the control. He kept searching until he found one that he could do. Alright, sword techniques, that's more like it. Let's see, multi-blade stance he asked himself. Right now he was glad he brought his swords with him, since the technique obviously required at least one sword. It could also be done with two. He had unsheathed Tazagare and Akatsuki and got into the necessary stance. That one was pretty easy, Naruto had said to himself. Naruto looked around and saw Iruka running towards him. He had a grave look on his face, but Naruto figured it was about something else. When he finally reached him, Naruto was staring at Iruka with a huge smile on his face. Then Naruto finally said, "So I guess you finally found me." "So do I pass?" "What? Pass?" Iruka replied, obviously confused. "I learned jutsu from the scroll, just like you wanted," Naruto said, obviously proud. "Who told you this?" Iruka asked with concern in his voice. "It was Mizuki-sensei, he told me everything. Where to find the scroll, where to meet him, and that I have to learn a technique from the scroll if I want to pass." Then it hit Iruka, this was all Mizuki. Then the sound of the air being cut had reached their ears. "Get down!" Iruka shouted as he dove on top of Naruto. A second later, the distinct sound of steel cutting flesh had filled the air. Naruto was looking up at Iruka, who had a pained look on his face. He didn't know from where, but some of Iruka's blood had dropped onto his face. "Well, it looks like you got here before I did. That's too bad," said a voice from the trees. Naruto looked to the direction of the voice and was shocked as to who was standing there. It was Mizuki. He had this smile on his face. Not like the one he usually had on during classes, but one that actually looked like he was enjoying the pain he was dealing. Mizuki-sensei, Naruto thought to himself. Naruto was hiding behind a tree hugging the forbidden scroll, while he was listening to Mizuki and Iruka talk. He had just learned why all the villagers had been so cruel to him. He had the Kyuubi sealed inside of him by the fourth. Now he thinks he understands why that person from 4 years ago had attacked him. He was in tears as to what Iruka was saying. At first he was talking about maybe he was the Kyuubi. At that point he was ready to run away. But then he started saying how they were both alike. And telling his pains that Kyuubi caused, but also of the joy of being with him was. Then he heard the sound of a shuriken spinning. He peeked out from the tree and saw Mizuki charging towards Iruka with that giant shuriken. It also looked like Iruka wasn't in any condition to defend himself. With a burst of rage, Naruto charged at Mizuki and launched a knee into his face. The shuriken went flying into a different direction and had knocked down Mizuki. At first Mizuki didn't move, but then he slowly got up. Then a familiar look in Mizuki's had appeared, the one of hatred. Ignoring this look, Naruto looked right into Mizuki's eyes and said, "If you touch my sensei again, I'll kill you." "Kage Bunshin no Jutsu," Naruto yelled. "Ha! Did you really think that you could win like that? The clones may have been solid, but if the person who used the jutsu is weak, then the clones are weak too," Mizuki said after he took out the last of the Kage Bunshin. "Damn!" cursed Naruto. Naruto was still tired from learning the techniques he had just acquired. He just couldn't produce enough clones with the chakra he had left. It was looking like Naruto had failed to protect Iruka. He failed all his precious person, he failed at becoming Hokage, and he had failed that girl. Get up, Gaki, said a bodiless voice. Naruto pulled his head up and looked around. There was no one except Iruka and Mizuki there. Don't tell me you forgot about your new ace in the hole, a different voice had said. Then Naruto had remembered, he had not lost all hope. He still had one more technique that might work. He knew he had just enough chakra left. So this was all or nothing. After this one attack he only had enough chakra to stay alive. Then Naruto had gotten on to his hands, he then managed to stand up. With a renewed ferocity in his eyes he said, "Did you think that was it? Actually yeah. You like more pathetic than your sensei over there," Mizuki said as he pointed at Iruka. Wrong choice of words, Naruto said as he pulled both of his swords of their sheaths, pointing both of them up. He then slowly brought the swords pointing down. As he did this, 4 glowing swords that were the exact copies of Tazegare and Akatsuki. They had floated in midair until Naruto got into a battle stance. It was then that they all pointed towards Mizuki. Mizuki couldn't understand what was happening until it was too late. Multi-blade stance, Naruto yelled. At once Naruto had charged at Mizuki with both blades ready to strike, and the floating copies followed closely after. Mizuki brought out 2 kunai to defend himself. 2 of the floating blades had charged ahead of Naruto and attempted to go for Mizuki's vitals. Mizuki had blocked both with the kunai. But the last 2 floating swords had went towards Mizuki's legs. With no way to defend himself he had both of his calves slashed. Mizuki dropped to his knees with a growl of pain. Naruto then kicked Mizuki in the chest and knocked him onto his back. Naruto was then on top of Mizuki with both his blades at Mizuki's neck, ready to chop off his head. You lose, Naruto simply said. He had the floating swords pin Mizuki down so he could use some wire to tie him up. Naruto stood up with a look of pride on his face, which was almost immediately replaced by a look of exhaustion as he dropped to the ground. Naruto, Iruka said, who was moments before stunned at what he saw. He was stunned that Naruto had produced so many clones, which were not illusions but solid clones, and a high-level sword technique. Iruka slowly crawled towards Naruto. He had a rough time since he was still injured from his encounter with Mizuki. Naruto, are you okay? Iruka said when he finally reached Naruto. All Naruto did was grin. That was all he needed to do. He had just saved one of his precious people, he had just used the techniques he learned on his own, and he had defeated his former sensei. Naruto was happy. It was so long since he had smiled a genuine smile. It was not his usual grin that he puts on for everyone. No, it was a smile of true happiness. Iruka had smiled when he saw the look on Naruto's face. It was a smile he rarely saw. He could tell he was happy. It was at this moment Iruka decided what he should do. Naruto, could you close your eyes for a moment? Iruka asked. Naruto then looked at Iruka with the look of curiosity on his face. But regardless of this he closed his eyes. He heard Iruka shuffle around a bit. He then felt him untie his headband and replaced it with something else. He figured that it was a bandage since he had hit his head when he was battling Mizuki. Okay Naruto, you can open your eyes, Iruka said. Naruto did as he was told. He had opened his eyes. He squinted a bit since dawn had come and he needed a little time to adjust to the light. When his vision cleared he saw Iruka smiling, though he wasn't wearing his headband. Naruto then felt his forehead. It wasn't a bandage as he thought before. He instantly knew what it was when he felt the cold metal on his fingertips. Congratulations Naruto, you graduate from the academy, Iruka had said to Naruto. Tears had started to well up in Naruto's eyes. Then when it was almost too much to bear, Naruto had done the only thing he could think of. Sensei, Naruto had shouted as he hugged Iruka. This knocked Iruka. They were both laughing. Both of them were laughing so hard that they didn't notice the person who was watching them from the shadows. It looks like they're having a good time, said a familiar hooded figure. Doesn't it, Hideo-kun? She asked another hooded figure. Yes, Tsukiko-sama, said Hideo. I think we should leave them be for now. For now let's go and see the Hokage, she said. Hi, said Hideo. He rose his hand and a small portal of shadows appeared in front of them. Slowly tendrils of darkness had sprouted from it. They slowly wrapped themselves around them. Later, cutie. The first hooded figure thought to herself and smiled. Then they both disappeared, leaving no trace that they were there. So you're saying Naruto has a rare power that only 4 other people currently possess, and that you two are 2 of the 4, said the third Hokage, who was meeting with a couple of strange people who had appeared out of a strange portal in his office. Yes, we are requesting that you allow us to train him to use these abilities, said Tsukiko, who was being unusually formal. I'm sorry, but if this training is to take place elsewhere, I cannot allow it. How come? Said Tsukiko, who was actually pouting a bit. Because if he leaves the village and decides to not return, he will be branded a Rouge Ninja and will be hunted down. I wouldn't want this of him. So that is why I refuse, replied the third. Tsukiko then blushed a bit at her attitude just moments before. She cleared her throat and asked, then would it be acceptable for us to stay here in the village to train him? The Hokage raised an eyebrow at this and asked, are you sure? Don't you want to go back to your homes? We don't have any homes to return to, we are travelers. So it would not be much trouble for us to stay in one place, Tsukiko had replied. The Hokage had closed his eyes and smiled, very well, we shall allow you to become residents of Konoha to train the one called Uzumaki Naruto. Though you shall need to have employment to pay for the rent that the living quarters will require, said the Hokage. I already have an idea for a job, said Tsukiko, we are all good enough to become shinobi of the village. If that is what you prefer, we shall have the academy arrange for you have a specialized exam for your unique abilities. If you pass, you shall be official members of Konoha's shinobi forces, if you fail you need to find some other form of employment, stated the Hokage. Understood, said Tsukiko. Now if you would please introduce yourselves, asked the Hokage. Of course, how rude of us. They both removed their hoods. I'm Kimura Tsukiko. She had long purple hair, and purple eyes. She had one of the most prettiest faces you had ever seen. That's all you could really see since she still had her cloak on, but you could still tell she had a nice body. I am Yamada Hideo, replied a handsome young man who had short hair except in the back he had longer hair which kept in a ponytail, and piercing silver eyes that seemed void of all emotion. I apologize but all of us aren't here, said Tsukiko. The Hokage said at this new information. She's waiting outside the gates. Her name is, outside the gates of Konoha. Geez, where are those two? Said a hooded figure sitting in tree with legs dangling down. The examiners were standing there in awe, they had only given these newcomers a weapons specialist's exam. They didn't expect these no-name people to even pass the exam, let alone ace it. The test was simple, using their weapons and any other techniques that they may have, to destroy the dummy that was placed in the room. The first 2 demonstrated above-average skills. But this last one was amazing, the one with purple hair, she absolutely destroyed the dummy. She displayed skills that could rival even a Jonin. All 3 of them showed skills that shouldn't even be possible. She was the one that had asked so innocently, so did we pass? Naruto entered the room and everybody stared at him. Nobody said anything to him until Shikamaru finally asked, why are you here? You can only be here if you graduate. Naruto was glad to answer this question. Well, as you can see I passed, he said as he pointed at his hit I ate. So Shikamaru responded with, whatever, and walked away. The door opened and this caught everyone in the room's attention. Okay, everyone settle down, Iruka had said as he entered the room. Immediately the room quieted, it was because they all knew what was going to happen. Today was the day all the graduates would be getting assigned to their teams. Some people didn't really care about their teams. One of them being Naruto. Just as long as I'm not with Sasuke Tem, he thought to himself. As soon as he got quiet, Iruka made his announcement. Okay class, I have a special announcement. We have some new graduates who have just passed the exam. At this everyone was a little surprised at this new information. Why would they accept new students this late in the year, they all thought. But despite this, almost all of the students just came to the conclusion that it didn't matter and it most likely wouldn't affect them whatsoever unless they were on the same team. Alright, please come in, Iruka said to the new students waiting outside. Then 2 people came in. The first to enter was a handsome guy, rivaling Sasuke. He had long black hair and silver eyes. His attire was very simple. He wore standard sandals and long cargo pants. He wore a sleeveless shirt that clung to his body, making his body quite visible for all to see. He wore a white scarf around his neck, which hid his jaw, and there was a bit of slack of the scarf hanging out of his back. Finally, he wore bandages around his hands. His appearance had all the girls swooning over him. The second was a cute girl. She had short messy red hair and brown eyes. She was constantly wearing a cute grin that reminded some people of Naruto's. She wore some slightly baggy pants that were taped near the bottom tightly against her ankles. She wore white socks and some sandals, odd-looking sandals that wrapped around her ankles. She also wore a vest that had no sleeves and had a small collar. The vest looked like the top of a Chinese dress, but it had red trim and it completely exposed her belly and lower back. And she wore strange-looking leather bracelets that had what looked like single chain links hanging all around them. This new girl had all of the guys' attention. The guy said, "Hello, my name is Hideo, pleased to meet you," he said, but it looked like he didn't even care about introductions. Then the girl said, "Hey, my name is I, any of you would be lucky to have me on your team," she said with her smile on her face while she pointed at the entire class. "She reminds me of someone, but I can't think of who," several of the students thought. "I like her style," Naruto thought, as he grinned a bit at her declaration. "Okay, thank you for your introductions, now please take a seat," Iruka said as he motioned for the unused seats near the back. They both nodded and moved to the back. All the students, except for Naruto and Sasuke, looked at them as they walked to the back. "Okay, now that is over. Your team assignments are as follows. Team 1. After the first few teams had been announced, Naruto just stopped listening, only perking up slightly when he caught the names of a few people of interest. A lot of the people in the class didn't stand out much, not having any special abilities or not belonging to one of the more noteworthy clans. All they really had was academy jutsu. But Naruto knew better than to underestimate anyone. You never know who someone will be in the future. Or what they're hiding. Now, Team 7, Uzumaki Naruto. Now Naruto was giving his full attention. He was crossing his fingers for anybody but Sasuke. Uchiha Sasuke. Crap, Naruto thought. And finally, all the females who weren't already on teams looked up and crossed their fingers, all hoping to be on the same team of Sasuke. Some of them even wanted to be with Naruto. Some of the girls had a secret crush on Naruto. But none of them let anybody know, since their parents told them to have nothing to do with him. But if they're on the same team, they wouldn't have a choice, right? The final member is. All the girls perked their ears, some were even on the edge of their seat. All hoping to be on the same team as the two cutest guys in their class. Haruno Sakura. Sakura jumped up and yelled, yes, ignoring all of the death glares she was receiving from all the other girls. All Sasuke thought was, crap, an annoying fangirl and a loudmouth. At the same time Naruto was thinking, crap, an annoying fangirl and a tem. Sure, Naruto liked Sakura at one point, but every time he ever even hinted at going out she always say, Sasuke's my one and only love. Quote. He heard it so much it made him want to hurl. He didn't even see what was so interesting about him, he just sits there. If you try talking to him you'd be lucky for him to turn away from you. He completely ignores you. Needless to say, he figured it was pointless to keep trying to pursue a relationship with her. The only person that was happy about this team was probably Sakura. Team 8. Almost everyone had been sorted into teams, except two. The last ones who weren't on a team was I and Hideo. So they would be a team that is a man short. So everybody was interested how this was going to turn out. When he finally got to the last team, Team 13, which Iruka assigned I and Hideo to. Iruka made another announcement. Okay, as most of you have noticed, we are a student short of making all of the teams equal. So the Hokage has come up with the solution of using another student from the existing teams as a substitute. Again, all of the students were shocked. Not only was there a chance to be on these new students' team, but they would be on a team that is almost a complete mystery. Since they are new, no one has seen them in combat. So if they ever came across the team, they would have no idea what to expect. The Junin senseis have looked at all of your abilities and chose the person that would be most effective in this team. The decision was made earlier today, so I don't even know. The messenger should be here shortly. So until then most of your senseis are waiting outside, so go out and meet them. If you were the one chosen then I will contact you. Team 13, stay here until the messenger gets here, Iruka told the entire class. At this the entire class, except Team 13, got up and left the class. All of the Junin senseis were waiting outside the classroom, including Team 7's, who was infamous for always being late. The senseis all took their students to various places throughout the building. But Team 7's sensei just told them to meet on the roof, and disappeared in a puff of smoke. They did as they were told, and headed up to the roof. Though they didn't notice the messenger with the news of who will be the substitute, entered the class shortly after they left. Iruka took notice right away. Iruka, the decision was finally made. The one who was chosen name is in this letter, now I'll be off. He handed Iruka the letter and left the room again. He opened the letter and read the contents. He was surprised at what was in it. Hideo, please come here. He asked. I and Hideo, who were still sitting in the back, came up to the front. I assume both of you know who the sensei as they assigned to you is. They both nodded. Good. I need you to take this letter to your new teammate, his name is. On the roof. Well now, I see all of you are here. Team 7's sensei told them, I guess we should start with the introductions. Now which one of you will start? After nobody said anything Sakura raised her hand. You have a question? Yes, why don't you do it first to show us how it's done? She asked. Okay, I guess I can do that. Well, where should I start? My name is Hitaki Kakashi, my hobbies include. I don't feel like telling. My dream is, none of your business. Okay now who's next? The same thought went through all three of their heads, it was. The only thing we know about you is your name. I'll start. My name is Haruno Sakura. My hobbies include. When she said this she looked at Sasuke and blushed. My favorite thing is, she looked and blushed again, and my dream is, she was blushing and glancing at Sasuke the whole time. Interesting, how about we move on to you now, he said as he pointed towards Sasuke. My name is Uchiha Sasuke. I don't have any favorite things, I don't have any hobbies, and my dream is to rebuild my clan and to kill a certain someone. Wow, so cool. Sakura thought. How interesting. Naruto thought as he rolled his eyes. We'll finally finish with you. Kakashi said, obviously referring to Naruto. My name is Uzumaki Naruto. My favorite thing is ramen and my precious people. My hobbies include training and going on stealth missions, and my dream is to become Hokage. This group doesn't look too promising. The girl is too obsessed with Sasuke. Naruto seems too loud to be a ninja. Sasuke seems to be the only one who could keep up with my training, he thought to himself. Hello? Sakura said as she waved her hand in front of Kakashi's face. Oh, sorry about that. Well, now that we got this all over with, I want you meet me at training ground 7 at 6 in the morning, he said as he started walking away. He stopped and without turning around he said, oh, don't have any breakfast, if you don't want to throw it up that is. And he disappeared in a cloud of smoke. Kakashi's last words made Sakura grimace, but it didn't seem to bother Naruto or Sasuke. They all went their separate ways, except Sakura who clung to Sasuke's arm all the way home. Naruto was tired and decided that he would use the stairs and walk. On his way down he found the two new students hanging in the stairwell, and seemed to react as he got closer. Without thinking he said, "Can I help you?" Neither of them replied, the only thing they did was hand a letter to him. "What is this?" asked Naruto. "It's a letter, duh," said I, looking at Naruto as if he was an idiot. I know that much. Naruto had just really met this girl. Despite his first impression he found her annoying. He opened the letter and began to read its contents. Uzumaki Naruto. It has been decided by all of the Junin, that you are most suitable for the substitute ninja for Team 13. Your skills complements the team. As this team is made up of weapon specialists, your skills in swordplay work perfectly with them. Participation in missions with both Team 13 and Team 7 are mandatory, unless you want the title of ninja stripped from you. You are to immediately report to your new sensei, Kimura Tsukiko, along with your new teammates, Shimizu Ai and Yamada Hideo. Approved by Hokage-sama. Naruto was standing there with his mouth hanging open. The silence went on for a bit, until Naruto finally yelled, "Why do I have to be on this team? And how do they know about my sword training? Because your skills match up with ours, and you don't really seem that secretive," said Hideo. "Shut up," Naruto yelled. "Be glad that they even considered you. Now come on. Our sensei is waiting," I told Naruto and walked off before he could respond. Naruto thought about a bit before he did anything. I could just do as they say and get extra training, or I could go home and stop being a ninja. When he realized that there was nothing to think about, he yelled, "Hey, wait up," he yelled as he ran to catch up to Ai and Hideo. Outside the academy, Naruto walked outside. It was already getting dark. He had followed Ai and Hideo outside. They didn't say who he was supposed to be looking for, all he knew was her name. It then that he saw her, on the swing he was usually at. One of the most beautiful girls he had ever seen. She had long purple hair, and eyes to match. She wore a vest similar to Ice. There was no collar, it went down into AV only showing the top of her chest. She wore baggy pants that had slits on the outside of the pants that went down both legs, showing them off to anyone who wanted to look. She also wore those martial arts shoes that Naruto had saw in a movie once. Finally, she had armbands that were similar to Sasuke's, only it had no elastic at the wrist, so it hung loosely, showing only her fingertips. She also wore a strange-looking ring of metal that was where a ninja tool pouch should have been. "Well, it looks like all of you finally arrived," she said while still sitting on the swing. "Now come here." She motioned for them to have a seat in front of her. They all did as they were told and sat down. She just sat there and looked at them for a while and said, "Do any of you know what to do now?" she said while laughing and holding the back of her head. "What do you mean? You're the sensei, you're supposed to know what to do," Naruto had told her. "Oh really? Well, I'm sorry then. Today is my first day as a Junin, so I didn't know what to do. Now why don't you tell us what you did at your first team meeting, then we could do what you did," she said with a big smile on her face. "Alright, all we did was introduce ourselves, including the sensei, and told each other about things like our hobbies, dreams and things like that. I think he's also going to get us to show what we can do tomorrow morning." "Well, that makes things much easier, thank you, cutie-kun. Naruto is fine," Naruto said as he blushed. "I guess we'll start with introductions. Now please start to show us how it's done." "Naru-kun, you can start." "Geez, why do I have to start?" "And I said Naruto is fine," Naruto asked. "Because I'm your superior and you would be going against orders if you didn't. And Naru-kun is so much cuter," she said, her smile never leaving. "Crap," Naruto thought. "My name is Uzumaki Naruto. My favorite thing is ramen and my precious people. My hobbies include training and going on stealth missions, and my dream is to become Hokage," saying it a little fast since he had already done it earlier today. "Thank you, Naru-kun. Well, I'll go next. My name is Kimura Tsukiko. I'm 16 years old. I like a lot of things. There's not much I don't like and I never really thought of a dream," she said with a big smile on her face. She's the same as Kakashi sensei, Naruto thought. Would you please go next?" she asked Ai. "Yes, Tsukiko sensei." When she said this, it made Naruto curious. How come she knows her name? Most Junin senseis don't associate with academy students. They only ever come into contact when the Junin shows special interest in a student. But he just pushed those thoughts to the back of his mind. "My name is Shimizu Ai. I'm 12 years old. I like winning. My hobbies include training and my dream is to be the best there ever was." "Good eye. Hideo, you're next," she told him. "Yamada Hideo, 13 years old. My dream is to kill a certain someone." This guy reminds me of a certain someone, Naruto thought. "Well, now that that's over, we'll move on to testing your skills," she said rather cheerfully. "Naruto, why don't you start? Show us a weapon technique." Naruto already expected to be called first, but since he only had one sword technique, he had to do it. He looked for a training dummy and found one that wasn't far away. He drew Tazagare and Akatsuki. He focused on the training dummy in front of him, closed his eyes. When he opened them, he was glowing yellow. he pointed both of his swords up, and slowly brought them pointing down. Slowly, chakra 4 copies of his swords appeared. Naruto got into a fighting stance and all the swords pointed at the dummy. Naruto then started to run towards it, getting 2 of the chakra swords to charge ahead. The both made a horizontal slash and severed the dummy in half. Naruto then kicked the upper half into the air. Naruto then jumped towards it. All of his swords spread in all directions, and when he was on target made all the blades make a stab and skewered it. Naruto landed back on the ground and pulled his swords in different directions. When the dummy made it to the ground it fell apart into several small pieces. After the technique was completed he said, multi-blade stance. Neither I or Hideo was very impressed, they just looked with mild interest. Tsukiko was just staring at him with concern. The chakra blades disappeared. After they did he asked, how was that sensei? Tsukiko didn't reply, she was only staring at him with concern. Sensei, is everything alright? This seemed to snap her out of it, and she replied, oh everything's fine. Now we should move on to the next person. You're up next. She told I. Yes, sensei. She said. She walked a bit away from the group and looked at another dummy that was beside the one Naruto destroyed. She brought out her hands and it looked like she was concentrating on something. She quickly opened her eyes and as she did the chain links on her bracelets grew, they were now long chains that looked like scorpions' tails behind eye. Naruto was amazed by this, he had never heard of a technique that can manipulate metal. But the change in the chains wasn't done. At the end of each chain grew what looked like kunai. As soon as they were done they all charged at the dummy, they all pierced through the dummy. Then they wrapped around it and tore it to pieces. Then the chains retracted and returned to the chain links that they came from. Naruto was staring at I with his mouth open, she just did what he did with much less effort. I just looked at Naruto and playfully stuck her tongue out. This made Naruto blush for some reason as he looked away so he could hide his face. Good. Now can Hideo come up next? She said and immediately Hideo walked up. All he did was stand there and close his eyes for a second, and 2, what looked like vortexes of darkness, appeared out of nowhere. He reached in each vortex with both hands, and out he pulled out a pair of katana. They were both beautiful, they had long blades, and a plate of metal covering the hand. In the center of the plate was a ruby that shone brightly. Then he started to go blurry and slowly he started to fade. Until he completely vanished from sight. Huh, was all Naruto could manage to say. He looked at I and Tsukiko and they just stood there, not even surprised at what happened. At first he thought it was genjutsu, so he yelled, Kai, he looked around again and still couldn't find him. Then shortly afterwards he reappeared behind Naruto. Done, said Hideo. Ah, yelled Naruto as he jumped away from him. Naruto heard a thump. As he turned around he saw that a dummy that was fine a second ago was now missing its head. Good Hideo. Now I guess I'll show one of my skills, she said as she reached inside of her pocket. After getting his breathing under control he said, Tsukiko-sensei, you don't have to do that. There's no need for your students to see how good you are. She just smiled at Naruto and said to I, use one of your chains to toss that up into the air. She pointed at the lower half of Naruto's dummy. Yes sensei. Again she closed her eyes for a second and a single chain came out and wrapped itself around the dummy and tossed it high up into the air. She pulled out a small black bar and held it out. She closed her eyes like the other two, the metal had extended and formed a staff. Then at one end of the blade a clear blade that looked like it was made of chakra had sprouted. What Tsukiko was holding was now a scythe. The blade was blue and the staff was black with gold at both ends. Then she had the bladed end and went into a strange-looking fighting stance. She looked up at the dummy that was now falling. She pulled back the blade a bit more and swung towards the dummy. In the path of the slash came an arc made of chakra, that was heading straight for the dummy. When the arc made contact it exploded. Naruto was looking at the ashes that fell from the dummy, then at Tsukiko who was making the scythe retract back into the metal bar. I think I might have overdid it, Tsukiko said while giggling. Well that seems to be it for today, please be back here at 6 p.m. For now go home and rest, I expect us to get our first mission soon, she told I, Hideo and Naruto. Naruto found it strange that his other teammates were going in the same direction as a group, though he didn't pay it any mind. All he was concerned was getting ramen in his stomach. Back with Tsukiko, I and Hideo. So Tsukiko-sensei, do you think he almost there? I asked Tsukiko. Yes, he almost there, all we need to do is to push him a bit and he'll be able to do it, she replied with an almost sadistic grin on her face. Back at the academy. Geez, that was a lot of paperwork. I'm glad the students for next semester are already registered, Iruka had thought to himself. When he came outside he was shocked to find a certain something. Great, and now we need to order more training dummies, Iruka thought. Naruto woke up early that morning. He got up at 5 p.m. He actually forgot why. He didn't really care at that point. He was really hungry, so he got up and had his usual 5 bowls of ramen for breakfast. After that he went to go take a shower. He kept on wondering what he got up so early for. But then his mind wandered, as it usually did when he took his shower. He recalled the events that happened when his sensei had visited him the night before. Last night, Naruto was about to go to bed. He was extremely exhausted from his long day. As he was about to collapse on his bed he heard a knock on the door. He was thinking about ignoring it and pretend he wasn't home. But then he heard, Naruto, open up. It's Tsukiko. He knew then he couldn't ignore her, she probably already knew he was up. So he walked towards the door and was grumbling about, senseis who stay up too late. He fumbled with the locks on his door a bit, he had quite a few. Since his apartment was constantly getting broken into. He even kept a cage bunshin home to take care of anyone who does. What do you want, sensei? He said to his sensei a little bit annoyed. Well, I came to give you your training schedule for the next week or so. I got a mission a little while ago, and I'll be gone for a while, she said. Okay. Naruto replied. They both stood there for a while, neither one of them moving or talking, until Naruto finally said, Are you going to tell me what it is? Oh, of course. All you have to do is see your training partner. She'll be the one looking over your training, she said. Who? Naruto asked. Naruto paled a little when she said this. He still remembered what she did to that training dummy. No offense, sensei, but I think I can train on my own just fine. That may be so, but she can teach you a few tricks that you can't learn on your own. Well, anyway, I gotta go and pack. See ya. She said as she walked away and waved. She's not really giving me a choice, is she? Naruto thought to himself as he was looking at the retreating figure of his rather strange sensei. Back in the shower, Naruto was just finishing washing his hair when he thought, Kakashi sensei might be weird too, but at least he doesn't make me train with. I have to meet with my team, Naruto shouted. Training ground. Did you hear something, Sasuke? Sakura asked Sasuke. No, he replied. The silence between them continued. Where the hell is Naruto and Kakashi-sensei? Sakura thought. Back with Naruto. Naruto had just finished getting dressed. Okay, am I missing anything? Naruto asked himself. After a moment of thinking he said to himself, oh yeah. Kage Bunshin no Jutsu, and a clone appeared. Alright, now guard the place while I'm gone, he ordered himself. Roger. The clone said as he saluted Naruto. After that Naruto grabbed his swords and left. Little did he know he had left his kunai holster and kunai pouch on the table. Training ground. Hey guys, what's up? Naruto said as he arrived. Naruto didn't receive a response, all he got was daggers stared at him from Sakura. Naruto rubbed the back of his head and said, sorry, I slept in. Yeah right. Sakura replied. Sasuke noticed that Naruto was carrying swords with him, so he asked, what are you going to do with those? He said as he pointed at Tazagare and Akatsuki. Naruto looked down, he smiled and looked back up and replied, oh, I was only planning on kicking your butt with them. Yeah right. Sasuke replied with a smirk on his face. They had waited there for another 10 minutes. Then Kakashi showed up. Where were you? Sakura yelled. Naruto didn't say anything since he knew he was just as guilty, and Sasuke didn't care. Sorry, a black cat crossed my path so I had to take the long way around, Kakashi said. Liar. Sakura yelled. Kakashi just closed his eye and rubbed the back of his head. Well anyway. Let's start. he said as he pulled out 2 bells. All you have to do is get these bells away from by lunch. If you don't get them, you won't get your lunch and I'll send you back to the academy. Naruto and Sakura gasped. Naruto wasn't really concerned about lunch, he just didn't want to go back to the classroom and sit through all those boring lessons. Remember, if you don't come at me with the intent to kill me, you have no chance of succeeding. You may begin, Kakashi said, and Sasuke and Sakura spread out. Now why did you stay behind? Kakashi asked Naruto. I figure I save us both the trouble and kick your butt right here and now, Naruto smirked. I suppose there isn't anything wrong with that, but are you sure you want to fail this early in the game? Kakashi replied. Don't worry about me, Naruto said as he pulled out his swords. Alright, Kakashi said as he pulled out a kunai. At first they both just looked at one another, sizing each other up. A gust of wind blew past them, rustling the leaves in a tree nearby. This caused one of the leaves to fall. It slowly swayed down to the ground. As soon as it hit, Naruto and Kakashi dashed at each other. Naruto was the first to make an attack. He made a cross slash with both his swords at him. At the point where the blades met, Kakashi placed his kunai there and they locked weapons. As fast as they did, they both jumped away from each other. Naruto immediately dashed back at him, hoping to catch him off guard. Making wild slashed at him. Maybe just kept on just them, occasionally parrying one that got too close. Kakashi saw an opening, and took advantage of it. Naruto's sword was low to the ground and Kakashi stepped it, pinning it in his hand on the ground. Naruto used his other to attack. But Kakashi just grabbed his hand, making his other hand useless. Looks like you lost, Kakashi said as he put his kunai against Naruto's throat. Naruto looked nervous. After a moment passed, Naruto grinned. Curious as to why he did this, he asked, is losing that much fun? Who lost? As Naruto burst into smoke. Well, that was unexpected, Kakashi said. Kakashi looked around, and he spotted a patch of blonde hair dashing through the trees. He kept his eyes wondering where he was going. Then he spotted another patch of blonde, then another, and another. There were several Narutos running in the surrounding forest. I heard he could use Kage Bunshin, but I didn't think he'd be able to create so many. And he distributed his chakra equally. I can't spot which one is the real one. He's better than I thought, Kakashi thought to himself. A few minutes had passed. Kakashi had looked around trying to spot the real one. In the process he spotted Sakura and Sasuke. They hid themselves well, he thought to himself. That could have gone better. Naruto thought, he was simply hiding under a rock that he dug out. Lucky that this training ground was one of his hiding places when he is running after pulling a prank. He knew that Kakashi was looking at a Kage Bunshin he created to distract him. So Kakashi was only looking for his other self. He reached for some kunai to throw, but he was surprised. Where his pouch should have been, there was nothing. Damn. I must have left it back at my place. Naruto was thinking on what to do. He knew he had no long-distance attacks. He could only attack at close range. He sat there thinking. The thought occurred to him. That might work, he thought. So he created 2 more Kage Bunshin to search for the Sasuke and Sakura, and relay a message to the rest them. Kakashi noticed that there were a few more Bunshin of Naruto running throughout the forest around him. He was wondering what he was up to. He was actually curious about his plan. He also noticed that one found another. He looked surprised at seeing him, then it whispered into his ear and he nodded. Looks like it's almost time to start again, Kakashi thought. As soon as those words went through his head, 15 Narutos had jumped from their hiding places. You know, Naruto, you're supposed to catch your opponent off guard. Not when they are on full alert, Kakashi said to the Naruto that he had been keeping his eye on. There's no more need to hide anymore, Kakashi-sensei, Naruto shouted as he drew his swords. Then all the other Narutos had copied and drew theirs. Then all of them pointed their swords up. Kakashi had actually been confused, he had never seen this in combat before. When he was thinking about this, the Narutos had begun bringing their swords down. On each side of each clone, only one chakra sword appeared. This made a total of 15 swords floating in the air. As soon as the clones had finished, they all shouted at the same time, multi-sword stance, and all charged at Kakashi. The first clone that had tried to make an attack burst into smoke when Kakashi dodged and punched it in the stomach. He had another surprise when the swords in the air didn't disappear, but remained and continued slashing at him. This was going to be really annoying. Yes, it worked. I didn't think controlling the chakra blades from a distance would work, Naruto thought. He was hoping that the last clone would find Sasuke and Sakura in case this didn't work. 4 clones had tried attack from all sides. They all tried to drive their blades into him, but he just jumped, and threw shuriken at them. All of his attackers disappeared. Kakashi had only one more Naruto to attack, but he still couldn't deal with the floating chakra blades. He had attempted to throw a shuriken at the leg of him, but the swords just blocked it. Damn. Kakashi thought, as he his hands into a seal and disappeared into the ground. Huh. The Naruto thought. Then a hand appeared below Naruto and pulled him under. Kakashi noticed that the blades stopped moving. He then said to Naruto, "You're better than I thought, maybe you can keep up with my training." The Naruto in the ground smirked and said, "Maybe I'm better than you think," and he disappeared into a cloud of smoke. What? Kakashi thought. Then the swords started moving again, attacking him so he barely had any chance to retaliate. All he could do was look for the original Naruto. He didn't expect the kid to be able to use this many high-level jutsu. He scanned the forest, dodging the blades that kept on attacking. Come on, I can't keep this up forever, Naruto thought, waiting for the signal. Almost as if on cue, his remaining clone popped out from behind a tree and gave him a thumbs up. Naruto just smirked. The blades kept on pushing him back, all Kakashi could do was block and dodge. Gotta do something fast, Kakashi thought as he kept scanning the forest for Naruto. Now, he heard someone shout and heard the sound of rope snapping. All of a sudden the ground beneath him gave way. He suddenly found himself in a hole in the ground. A pitfall, you're kidding me, he said to himself. His keen ears caught the sound of swift movement from above. He saw Sasuke going various hand signs. Uh-oh, Kakashi thought. Kaden. Sasuke began. Okay, you got me, Kakashi said as he put his hands up in defeat. After Kakashi got out of the hole, he was standing in front of them. Good job to all of you, the real reason behind this test is teamwork. And needless to say, you all pass with flying colors. To have Naruto distract me while Sakura and Sasuke had prepared a trap was pretty good. Despite the use of the bells to divide you amongst yourselves, he said, smiling with his single eye. All 3 of them were all beaming with pride, while Sasuke was just smirking. Now all of you take the lunch boxes, go home and rest, we'll be getting our first mission tomorrow. Naruto, stay behind for a bit, I want to talk to you. So everybody left except for Naruto. When he was sure that Sakura and Sasuke were gone, he spoke to Naruto. Naruto, that was some technique you have. But I'm just curious, in your file it says that you didn't receive any training with swords from any of the instructors at the academy. So why are you able to wield them as good as you do? Kakashi asked. Well, I guess you could say that I'm self-trained, Naruto replied. You can go now, Naruto, Kakashi said. Naruto nodded and began to leave. As Naruto was almost out of earshot, Kakashi asked, "Where is your kunai pouch, Naruto?" "Bye, Kakashi-sensei," he yelled as he started running. "You forgot it, didn't you?" he said out loud. At Naruto's apartment. That was a long day, he said as he was climbing the stairs up to his apartment. He knocked on the door expecting his bunshin to open up for him. The door did open, but not by who he was expecting. Standing there, looking a bit angry, was I. "Where were you?" I asked. "I was out doing my own training." Where is my bunshin?" Naruto asked. "Oh, you mean him," she said, pointing behind her. Naruto looked around her and saw that his clone was tied up and gagged. "I just used him to find out a bit more about you." Naruto looked at her suspiciously. He decided to dispel the bunshin and find out what it knows. When the information reached his mind, he cringed. He never wants to think about it again. "Since I put your little buddy through quite a bit, I'll let you off the hook. Be prepared, we're going on a joint mission with Team 7 soon," she said with a smile on her face. She was about to leave when she said, "Oh, one more thing. Don't let happen again, K. Naruto replied. Good. She said as she closed the door behind her. What did I do to deserve this? Naruto thought to himself. Steel here, target sighted. Cherry blossom here, confirmed. Dragon here, awaiting orders. Scarecrow here, capture target. Red here, negative, no chance of capture. Request to upgrade to assassination. Scarecrow here, negative, the mission is to capture target alive. Steel here, engaging target. Assassination commencing. No. Dragon, Cherry Blossom, stop them, Scarecrow ordered. Roger. Both of them replied. That cat must die, shouted I as Sakura was holding her back. Let me go Tem, Naruto yelled as he was in the same situation with Sasuke. As all of this was going on, Hideo simply walked over and picked up the Fire Lord's wife's cat. The cat seemed to enjoy being with Hideo and purred as he stroked his head. Kakashi just sighed at the situation in front of him. He brought his hand up to his face to talk into the radio. Hello, Command. Target successfully captured, returning to Hokage Tower, said Kakashi into his headset. Hokage Tower. Congratulations on another successful mission Team 7, Team 13, the Hokage said to the people present, as usual your pay will be mailed to you. Now for your next mission. That's it Oji-san, I'm sick of doing chores for other people. I want a real mission, Naruto yelled. Nobody said it, but all of Team 7 and 13 agreed. Even Kakashi was tired of watching them do chores. Naruto, you're not the proper rank yet. These D-rank missions are essential, they help you build teamwork and develop skills you didn't have before, Iruka said, though he himself remembered doing chores and he remembered how much he disliked it. HMPH, said Naruto disappointed, he knew that everybody was ready. Almost as if he read his mind, the Hokage said, well I guess I can give you something a little better. This put a big smile on the blonde's face. The Hokage reached into a box of scroll and pulled out one that had big C.S all over it and handed it to Kakashi. After he did he said, your job is a simple one. You are to escort a bridge builder back to his home, protecting him from bandits and wild animals and any other threats until he completes the bridge he is currently working on. You fail if he is injured, or killed. You can come in now Tazuna-san. After he did a drunk old man had stumbled into the room. So these are the ones that are going to be protecting me, huh? Tazuna said as he looked at each one of them. The blonde kid doesn't look like he can do much. This made Naruto more than a little angry, but he kept thinking to himself, must stay calm, killing the client won't get me another C rank. Tazuna-san, please meet us at the gate, my students need to prepare their things for their stay in your village, said Kakashi. Fine. Tazuna replied, and left. In Naruto's apartment, Naruto was currently packing his things while a rather curious redhead was watching him. Why are you here? Shouldn't you be getting ready for the mission? Naruto asked. Don't worry about it, I got Hideo to take care of it for me. I just wanted to get a good look at the place since I didn't really get to last time, I replied. This put the memories of his bunshin into his head. This made him quiver a bit. So how come you live alone? I asked, wanting to know more about Naruto. The look of irritation disappeared from Naruto's face and was replaced with one of sadness. He had pushed those thoughts at the back of his mind. He was focused on the mission ahead of them, so he forgot about it until he was asked that question. None of your business. Naruto simply replied. Come on, I want to know more, I said, not taking the hint. I said it was none of your business, Naruto snapped back. Naruto, I said, she didn't expect that kind of reply from Naruto. Usually he was all cheery. She could tell she hit a nerve. She left a bit after she realized this and let Naruto be by himself for a little while. She closed the door behind her, but before she did she caught a glimpse of Naruto. She wasn't sure, but she thought that she saw tears. Konoha streets. She had to go and remind me, Naruto said to himself. Naruto was walking along the main road. This was the fastest way to the gates. He figured he would sew up a little early and make a good impression. Sure, he was only trying to impress someone that insulted him within 10 seconds of knowing, but he was still a client. He was just trying to think about a way to talk with I without making it awkward. It was very rare for anyone to see that side of him, people just saw the smile. So he rarely dealt with people who knew how sad he can be. This is going to be a pain, Naruto thought. Jerk. Naruto stopped walking and looked in the direction of the shouting. He saw a girl with blonde hair, a purple outfit and wearing an apron that said, Yamanaka Flowers, on the front. She was on her knees picking up bouquets that fell to the floor. Ino? Naruto asked himself. He had never really talked to her, all he ever saw was her arguing with Sakura over Sasuke, not like either of them had him in the first place. Naruto continued on walking. Stupid flowers, stupid guy, stupid job, she was yelling to herself. Naruto stopped in his tracks. He looked at the gate, and then at Ino. I'm too nice for my own good, Naruto said as he turned around. Nobody even wants to stop to help, Ino shouted long enough for people walking by to hear. I think you spoke too soon. Ino looked up and saw that Naruto was picking up bouquets. What are you doing? Ino asked. I think it looks like I'm helping you, he said as he picked up another one. No, I mean what are doing? Don't you have a mission right now? She asked. How do you know about that? Naruto asked, as he was only given the mission a few hours ago. Well, you're not exactly dressed for a picnic, she said. I guess not. Naruto laughed. Thank you, I was having a pretty bad day, she said and sighed afterwards. I think everyone walking by knew that, Naruto stated. I guess so. Naruto, do you mind doing me one more favor? Ino asked. And what would that be? Could you help me carry these back to my shop? There's too much for me to carry on my own. I guess so. Great. Come on, Ino said as she started walking. Naruto looked at the gates and sighed. At first they walked in silence. The only noise being made was that of everyone going about their daily business. So what are all of these for? Naruto asked. I think you mean what were they for? My marriage was about to happen, but something came up and they had to cancel. So now we decided to cut out losses and see if we can sell them, Ino said, obviously annoyed at it all. So you've been having a bad day? Naruto laughed. Hey, why are you laughing? Ino yelled. Well, I find it kinda funny that you're able to be a ninja with ease, but a simple job as a florist is stressing you out, Naruto said with a smile. Shut up, Ino said as she playfully pushed Naruto. They both joked like this all the way to the shop. When they reached it, they both went in. Where do you want these? Naruto asked. Just set them down in the corner, she instructed. He did as he was told. I gotta go, but first, Naruto said as he walked up to the front desk and rung the bell. What are you doing? Ino asked. I'm a customer and I'd like to purchase some flowers, he said as if it was the most obvious things. Alright, what do you want? I'll take one of the bouquets that we brought in. Ino grabbed one of the ones that were in front of her and walked behind the front desk and pushed a few buttons on the till. Alright, 15 ryo please, she said. Naruto reached into his pocket and pulled out just enough and gave it to her. Thank you very much, and if you don't mind me asking who are those for, she said as she put the money in the till. When she looked around, Naruto was holding them out. Reluctantly she took them. Thank you, she said. You're welcome, and remember to smile. You're prettier when you do, Naruto yelled as he ran out of the shop. She was glad he did, because her face was redder than a tomato. Konoha gates. Tazuna, Team 13 and 7 were all at the gate, except for Naruto. Which was strange since he was usually the first to show up on missions. After a little more waiting, they all saw Naruto running up to the gate. When he got there he said, sorry, I had a tough time fitting all of my ramen into my bag, he said with a big grin on his face and rubbing the back of his head. Everybody didn't believe it, though I thought it was because of her. Well, since everybody is here I guess we'll head out, Kakashi said to everyone. Everybody nodded and started walking. Tazuna was talking to Kakashi about his village and why the bridge he was building had to be built. Sakura was trying to talk to Sasuke, but he wasn't even listening to her. Hideo was just walking by himself in the back of the group. So was Naruto until a certain redhead walked to his side. Naruto looked at her a bit weird. She just smiled. After a while of silence she said, my name is Shimizu I come from Takigakure. I'm 12 years old, My parents were killed on mission and I joined with Tsukiko-sensei shortly after that. I like how the rain feels against the skin. I don't like people who think they're better than everyone else, and my hobbies include walking and I also enjoy singing. Huh, was Naruto's only reply. That's my real introduction. The first time was only my interests as a ninja, she said with a smile that almost surpassed Naruto's. Is this some sort of trick to get to know about me more? Naruto asked, still remembering the events that played out before they left. No, I just thought that my teammates should know more about me. You know, strengthen the bonds that keep this team together, she replied. Naruto was still unsure about it. Until she said, you don't have to say anything about yourself that you don't want to. Naruto thought about her words. He didn't say anything for a while. Naruto replied, my name is Uzumaki Naruto, I come from Konohagakure. I am 12 years old, I never knew my parents, I have been training to be a ninja since the day a certain ninja saved my life. I also like how the rain feels and don't like people like that either. I don't have many hobbies, but I would be glad to accompany you on one of your walks and listen to you sing, with a genuine smile on his face. His response made I blush. Nobody had ever talked to her like that, or even looked at her the way Naruto just did. Kakashi was watching the two with mild interest. I'm glad that those two sorted out whatever problem they had before, he thought. After Naruto had told her a joke and both of them burst out laughing. Now they could concentrate on the mission, Kakashi said to himself. As he finished thinking, he noticed a small puddle off to the side of the road. Naruto was enjoying himself with Ai, until he heard the rattling of chains behind them. When he looked, he was shocked to see that spiked chains had wrapped around Kakashi and tore him to bits. He heard Sakura scream. Then at that moment everyone had drawn their weapons. Sasuke had thrown one of his kunai at the first attacker to stop him in his tracks from beside Sakura, who was protecting Tazuna. Sasuke then jumped into the air and threw a shuriken at the chain connecting the two attackers. When it stuck itself, Sasuke threw a kunai in the hole in the shuriken, limiting their movement and finally finishing by kicking them both in the face. This broke the chain on the gauntlets. They both went in different directions, attacking the ones that looked like the weakest targets. One in the black cloak attacked Ai, his mistake. Ai had her chains coming out of her bracelets. They all dashed towards him and had him restrained. Naruto was impressed with how they dealt with the first attacker, but it didn't look like they noticed the second one that was about to strike Ai from behind, and from what he saw, there was poison laced with their weapons. She couldn't defend herself since she restrained the first attacker with her chains. He couldn't make it to her in time to stop it. Then, as he thought that one of his only friends was about to die, all of the people around him had stayed frozen into their positions. As Naruto was wondering what was going on, he heard a voice say, "Do you wish to save her?" Naruto was surprised, but was too busy thinking what to do. Then the voice said, "I will not ask again, do you wish to save her?" "Of course I do," Naruto replied. "Then close your eyes, when you open them plunge your sword, Tazagare, into the ground and focus on the girl. Then you will save her." Naruto did as he was told and closed his eyes. Slowly all the events started to resume. The assassin was about to strike. Then Naruto had opened his eyes and plunged Tazagare into the ground and focused on Ai. He hoped this was going to work. The assassin had struck, but nothing happened. It sounded like a sword had struck a shield. When the assassin brought his weapon back, it tore. A bit of her clothing was torn, and indeed there was no wound. When the assassin saw this, he ignored everybody else and went straight for Tazuna. Sakura and Hideo were preparing to defend Tazuna from the assassin. Then almost as soon it had started, Kakashi came out and clotheslined the assassin, and it was over. Everybody stared in shock at Kakashi. They all thought he was dead. Until they looked at the place where his remains should have been and only saw a pile of wood. "Well, good job all of you, though I want to ask you what you did Naruto, too." Kakashi was cut off as he looked at Naruto. When this happened, everybody looked at Naruto, and they were all shocked too. When Naruto noticed, he said, "What? Do I have a boogie?" he said as he wiped his nose. Unaware that his pupils were now white, and that it was slowly fading back to its original color. After the recovery from the shock, Kakashi had said to Tazuna, "We need to talk." When Tazuna heard this, he got nervous. Now why were the demon brothers, well-known missing nin, attempting to assassinate you? Because of their reputation, they just don't go out to just kill random people, Kakashi asked. Well, I might be marked for assassination by Gato and his men, he said with a guilty tone. Well, thanks for that, but now that we are aware that there will be enemy ninja involved, we can't protect you. You only paid for protection against bandits and such. But the mission we are on is considered an A- rank mission. So we will be going back to the village. But was grabbed by Tazuna. Please don't go, the people back in the wave need me. I won't make it there alive without you guys, he said, almost pleading them. Kakashi thought about this and said, well, I guess it depends on what the team wants. What do you guys think? Everybody was surprised at this, they were only given orders. They were never given the choice of going on with the mission or quitting it. They all thought about this for a second. Surprisingly, it was Hideo who said something first. He said, we should go on. If we don't accept this mission, an entire country would be kept in poverty. After hearing this, the entire group agreed. So I guess we'll be going, Kakashi told Tazuna. When he got this information, he was relieved. They all continued going on, almost as if nothing happened. In the trees nearby, I must report this to Zabuza-sama, Haku thought to himself, and jumped off in search of said person. Left behind were two forgotten demon brothers, who were tied up. One of them asked to no one in particular, what about us?